facing a lot of questions about generative AI from your customers lately? P2P Connect has partnered with AI expert Innominds to deliver a 15 minutes crash course session on generative AI. Let us hear from Mr. Ravi Meduri, EVP IP and Digital Solutions at Innominds to learn key generative AI capabilities and how businesses are applying these technologies.
Everybody wants to know about this and how it can benefit their businesses, and even at an individual level also, I think there is huge benefit, and a lot of us in different professions, right, including marketing, content creation, even in development, and software development, software engineering, we all can gain from generative AI. And therefore this is no better time than to speak about generative AI with your customers. And primarily, if I can just say where people see the value of generative AI, it is in where there are conversations, right? And where there are dialogues, where there are, people asking things or requesting for things, and businesses actually, sort of responding and fulfilling those things. So that's the top use case, and that's what you can see here. The enhanced customer experience, with that kind of conversation oriented experience, and that's the main benefit. But also there are other benefits in terms of how it can support the product management, how it can increase productivity. I just mentioned, right, almost every professional, every trade, they can benefit from generative AI, so that increased productivity. And most important of all, the data driven decision making, right? So you can bring in data into your decisions, and take clear decisions. So these are some of the generative AI use cases that Innominds has worked on. We are very fortunate that in the last 1 year, since the generative AI became very popular, right, with the launch of the Chat GPT service and the GPT Turbo and GPT 3.5, and subsequently all those enhancements. From there till now, we've been able to productionize about 10 projects, and very different and diverse set of projects. And these are the use cases that we see as clear business benefit, clear business value for enterprises through these use cases, and we see good traction. And the number one is customer interfaces and assistance, and within that, the chatbot and the Gen AI powered chatbot, or interactive and conversational AI bot, is the top use case. And we see this in industry after industry, whether this is a website inquiry. For example, soon on our Innominds website, we're going to be launching a generative AI powered website inquiry, so which will answer anything about Innominds and how someone can, like say, take the support of Innominds, or whether this is customer service, or whether this is assistance to contact centers through a live agent, bot powered live agent. So all of these are top use cases. And the second top use case, people say, is content creation. Almost a lot of people, including at an individual level, we are relying on generative AI to do our write-ups, to do our emails, to do our abstracts, right? To do our, documents, for example, like product documents and so on. So content creation, and we will talk about one such very interesting healthcare content creation project that we deployed, is the second top use case, because this is also required by compliance. A lot of industries, they will have to maintain a standard of documentation, including, for example, in software engineering, right? There is a standard of documentation that ISO or CMM, or 13485 in the medical world, the quality and the processes in the 13485 certification, FDA, they are ISO 13485. These all require content in a standardized way. So generative AI can support that. The other big use case is I'm just switching to the right side, the vector search, product search, any content search can be made more semantic and refined with the help of vector search, and generative AI as a way to create the agents that will like put these embeddings right? And there are many vector search supported databases. So we partner with one such called DataStax, who do the Apache Cassandra and the managed version of that, the DB as a service with Apache Cassandra and Astra. So they have a vector search. Postgres has a vector search. And even the AWS Aurora, Azure, SQL, they all support now vector search. So vector search is a popular use case. So product searches, content searches, document searches, people searches, all of these can be enabled through generative AI. Contracts and agreements, legal contracts, contract between two vendor partner contracts. So all of these, again, the life cycle management of those contracts, including drafting, including negotiation, and finalization, and to some extent execution, contract execution, is also powered by generative AI. One interesting use of generative AI, and Innomans has done some pioneering work here, is what we call the smart and headless UI. So you don't need a visual UI like screens and mobile apps, etc. So you could actually talk to your application. So in fact, we have some demos and some work that we have already done here. You can literally talk to your application. So those of you, for example, who have watched the Iron Man series, and if you have seen the Iron Man, like talking to Jarvis, right? And then there is a visual projection, a 3D projection that is, powered by the AI, right? When on as a response to whatever the Iron Man is doing, and then he can actually through his fingers do that. So something like that, if not so futuristic, you can actually talk to your application now, and that could be chat based or that could be voice based also. So that's the headless UI that we are powering through generative AI. And what you see on the bottom are also very important. A plethora of developer tools like Copilot. You have GitHub Copilot, you have Windows Copilot. And then there are many other developer assistants. There is Code Whisperer. So whether this is developing new code or reviewing code, or generating unit tests out of code. So that's on the developer side. Similarly, on the tester side, where you have test data management, test case authoring, test executions, etc., powered by generative AI. So there's quite a few developer and testing tools made possible through generative AI. And lastly, optimization and decision support. So a lot of decisions can be optimized. So generative AI is not only about language, it's also about decision making, right? So for example, you can even ask it, which restaurant should I go for, given that this is my taste. And this is where prompt engineering comes into the picture, where with the help of prompts, right, you can actually get a very refined and a very recommendative type of response than just giving you information. So generative AI is not about information retrieval. It is also about decision support and optimization. So we have several sectors. These are the generic use cases, but we also have specific sector. So therefore, very specific domain-based use cases also can be supported by generative AI, like in telecom, you have your network optimization, you have your churn prediction based on conversations, that you can drive through generative AI. In energy, you can actually have, the maintenance and monitoring and trading. Again, don't forget that generative AI is not just about large language models. Large language models is one class of generative AI. There are other generative AI, like algorithms and models as well. So, for example, we have done generative AI to do anomaly detection, where on historical data, whether this is time series data or cross-sectional data, using generative AI, we recreate the data and understand the data distribution and use that to predict anomalies. So that's the true Gen AI, not just large language model. Of course, large language model is one of the foundational models, and then very popular these days, but there are others as well. Retail, given that a retail has a lot of customer, like omni-channel, interconnected commerce, etc. So all of these, can be solved through generative AI. And of course, I mentioned visual search, product search. So you need not have product search as text alone. You can input an image, and then you can get recommendations on what products match that image. So those are all possible. And in healthcare, given that there is a lot of unstructured data in healthcare, in physician notes, in the EMR itself, a lot of unstructured data, and then the whole claim processes, from a payer perspective. So a lot of unstructured data, all of this, the understanding of that, images, radiology images. So all of these can be, solved by generative AI, and it can actually perform the role of. You must have heard that ChatGPT has passed the doctor's test, the final year doctor's test in the US, and amazing, and its consistency, right? Of course, there are some dangers, and we will subsequently talk about that. You have to avoid hallucinations, you have to avoid biases, you have to ensure that you have some human in the loop and some kind of an ML ops framework, which ensures that you can rely on these generative models. And that's a huge topic. Explainability, interpretability, and AI governance is a huge topic. You heard that Jeffrey Hinton himself, the pioneer of convolutional neural networks and a lot of what we now call deep learning. He's a pioneer. He himself, he expressed concerns on how this AI, if it is not regulated and if the governance is not there, will lead to some problems. So that's about generative AI and use cases. We can talk more, but in the interest of time, we'll just move ahead on. How do you, like plan your generative AI? Like what is the journey, right, that an enterprise or a business can take, through generative AI. Before we actually solve a specific use case, we always suggest that you must first do a business ideation. So you have to see what aspects of this business, right, are driven or should be driven by data, are more language oriented, are conversations oriented, or where you want to actually go beyond what you have seen, and then have this generative frameworks and foundational models in place, etc. So you need to first look at the business ideation, and also you have to keep in context that many businesses also are regulated, and they have to also go through certain compliance. So for example, there is a HIPAA compliance, there is a PCI compliance, then there is insurance. Insurance has its own compliance, right? And that governs on what you can do, what you cannot do, right? And so you have to first do the business ideation, and typically we conduct workshops, whiteboarding sessions, right, and then some tabletop designs, right, etc. And then find what business processes and what business functions can like benefit out of generative AI. And then we come up with a set of prioritized ideas, and then we conduct those idea validation, where we check from a technology readiness, from a deployment readiness, again the governance aspects, right? And then how you can actually put some guardrails. There is this huge concept of AI guardrails. So whether you can put guardrails, we can put a human in the loop. So all that, you will validate the ideas, and you shortlist the ideas, and you conduct a proof of concept. The good part is a proof of concept, with the tooling that we have right today, for example, can be done in days. It's not weeks. You can just do it in days. And then you evaluate and put this into a pilot. The pilot is something like you can do a localized pilot on a subsection, of the business. You can do it on a city, or you can do it like, say, the classic A/B testing. You can do it on a blue-green deployment, and have a certain deployment, on a localized region, and see how it behaves. And then you can go into the production, right? So that's the journey. And this journey typically won't exceed 6 months. So a business, from the time that it is interested to develop something on generative AI and automate, can do so within 6 months. And what can InnoMinds do here? InnoMinds, with our partnerships, particularly our Azure partnership, and where we have a lot of assets built on on the Azure, right, including the Azure foundational models, and the Azure pipelines, and the Azure powered PaaS layers, etc. So using that and our InnoMind's own IP, we can actually help in any of the journey elements. We can conduct workshops, we can validate ideas, we can do proof of concepts, we can deploy and then assess pilots, and then we can also take things through production and put in an ML ops and a governance framework around that. So that's what InnoMinds can do. And what you see here at the bottom are also accelerators and good assets, great assets, from Microsoft and Azure. So there is Azure OpenAI, which is the managed, OpenAI services. It has some data guarantees as well, so which is more than what OpenAI guarantees from a data perspective. You have Azure machine learning, you have Azure cognitive services, and then you have the GitHub copilots, the copilots as developer tools, the copilot for the Microsoft, copilot on all Microsoft technologies, and then the Hugging Face, which is essentially a complete framework and wrapper around generative AI and generally AI models, that you can use as accelerators to speed up, this journey. One last thing before I stop for questions is, how do you, determine, what generative AI framework you will take, right? So there are three broad decisions: whether you will go for a already pre-trained LLM like ChatGPT, where you don't train anything, you just fire your prompts and get your responses, or whether you will create something from scratch, or whether you will do private LLM, which is, you do something like retrieval augmented generation, some fine tuning and some further training on your data. This is a key decision. And also a key decision is, are you comfortable sending your data to a public LLM like ChatGPT, even though they may have guarantees, that is now still past your firewall. So you have to take that decision, and are you comfortable, doing your own LLM and within your firewall versus outside your firewall on a SaaS mode, etc. So this is a key consideration. Infrastructure, fine-tuning LLMs is not cheap. They require significant compute power. For example, GPUs, etc. And GPUs are extremely costly. For example, a small benchmark is for every 10 MB of data, you might have to spend something like tens of thousands of US dollars. So if you want to train on gigabytes of data, you might have to spend hundreds of thousands of US dollars. So, the infrastructure and what you can do from that, and then the fine tuning need, you have to trade that off. And that's a key decision. And lastly, the inferencing, even post training, once you want to put this up, you have to remember that this will be very expensive. Chat GPT, for example, for it to support so many calls, API calls per second, it maintains a huge infrastructure, and much of their funding actually goes into infrastructure, right? And that's how they have priced it. So this is also a top consideration for you, right? So that's the some of the decision parameters, and like I said, these are some of the paths that you can take towards generative AI. You have to focus on your data. You have to ensure that you're doing the training or fine tuning on data that is authentic, that doesn't have biases, right? That has been validated and so on. So the data curation is very important. Then building your own LLM versus fine tuning, etc. So that's something that again an enterprise has to take up, and these are the tools that you have here at the bottom, and a service provider like InnoMinds with its own accelerators can help, right? And then the use cases and how you deploy it for conversations, for automation, for decision support, and lastly the deployment governance, right? And how you operationalize with ML ops. So underneath you see the tools. Again, I won't go into details in terms of what are these tools, how do they help, and what do you need these tools for. And again, that's where a service provider with its experience, right, like Minds can support all of you as partners and help you work with these tools. So lastly, how can we help? We can actually help all of you as partners, in your customer conversations, or if you even in your other partner conversations, right? We can promote, we can be a Gen AI advocate. We can promote, these business process optimization and data-driven decision making, through Gen AI. And then we can conduct workshops, we can share knowledge, we can share expertise, we can recommend and suggest best practices, we can collaborate on projects, we can conduct research and study and do proof of concepts, we can sort of say manage and govern pilots, we can conduct hackathons, we can actually crowdsource some of this innovation and set up those crowdsource platforms for innovation. So these are the things that InnoMinds can help as a partner for you. And I will stop here. I hope I've been able to cover whatever questions you had. And if not, please, this is a time to ask your questions. Thank you for listening to me. Thank
Thank
you,
you,
Lily.
thank you, thank you, Ravi. So any question you can write in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask. Will not take more than 2 to 3 questions. And Ravi, if you can share your details so that they
Yes.
can be in touch with you, or anyone from the Innomine team, if you
Mm.
share their details so that they can be in touch to do the partnership
Yes.
together. So that would be
Yes.
helpful. In the chat window only, you can share the details maybe.
Supercharge your business by signing up today to the P2P platform, unlocking a world of new opportunities, expanding your revenue potential, and reaching a